Dr. Jacoby.
Where were you?
I have an alibi.
When Paris Hilton was driving her car.
I'm sorry, I don't follow those stories.
Well,
I'm quite ignorant culturally.
You are a smart man. So, well. Is it possible for us to have natural moral inclinations?
Absolutely.
That just come from the fact that we're a social primate species?
Yes, and I've read your analysis of the evolution of morality in the science of good and evil, and I think that's very likely.
And this would be what? How God did it?
Well, how did God bring physical life into existence? Through a long process we call evolution. Seems to me totally consonant with that view that morality also evolved. There's a time at which humans, however you define humans, were moral. And so I have no problem with that. In fact, I think your analysis in your book sheds light on how that may have happened. I find that fairly persuasive.
Okay.
But I'm not saying that, is there good and evil, or is it just something we all determine? It's a consensus, which is the feeling I got from your book.
Yes, so, well, then, how, for example, how do you derive moral principles from the Bible? Say, for example, Old Testament Deuteronomy sort of laws about stoning to death disobedient children or adulterous women and so forth. Obviously, you wouldn't endorse that today.
Moral principles are, before we can interpret any sacred text, we have to agree is there morality at all? Because
I think we agreed on that. So
do we agree on that?
I think we agree on that.
Okay, you talk about provisional ethics.
Yeah.
I'm more the absolutist, not the dogmatic, but...
Right, so if you're an absolutist, then my provisional position is in between. It's not in between relativity and absolute.
In between.
So, for example, if you're an absolutist...
Like in between the existence of God and the non-existence of God.
What do you do with the divinely given laws about stoning to death women, for example? You wouldn't endorse that today, I presume.
Well, I don't believe that the Old Testament law is still in effect today.
Then why bother to read the Old Testament at all if it's not relevant?
In my view, the Old Testament may not be the law of God for us today, but it's still the Word of God. There's something to learn through that. There are many directions this could go
As
in.
literature, you mean, but not as a moral lawgiver.
No, it's just spiritual principles that can be learned. But I'm the last one to say, let's have Sharia law for Christians.
But which ones? I mean, clearly, pretty much everybody in this room would surely reject the Deuteronomy laws, right? And why? Why would you reject them? Because we've grown beyond that now. So what's the algorithm? What's the rule you use to pick out the Old Testament passages you do agree with and those you don't agree with?
I think this is just a little simplistic. Deuteronomy, like all the books of the law, talk about care for the poor, the needy, the disadvantaged, even the outsider, not just the insider. Which laws do we mean? Yes, there's some that are more problematic for us today than others. But there are quite a few of those laws that I think many people would actually approve of.
Of course.
So it's too simplistic just to say, biblical morality is...
No, but my question for you is, how do you decide? What just a sort of an intuitive sense, like, yeah, okay, I don't buy that. But this one, taking care of the poor, yeah, of course. Stoning to death disobedient children, no, okay, I reject that. But where are you getting that decision tree?
Well, there are two separate issues here. One is what God may have revealed to an ancient people working in history in Israel. The other issue is what works today.
You have 2 minutes.
Since there's no church state anymore, and the abortive experiment of Christendom from 325 until fairly recently should make us never want to go back there, we have to separate those issues. I'm not saying that's an easy one, but there are many things in Deuteronomy and the other books that show God's gentleness, His justice, and His love, His forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Both sides.
So religion got some of it right 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, but some of it wrong, and we can advance, right? I mean, we interpret based on what our sense is morally of what's right and wrong.
No, I won't agree with that.
Right. So, again, I'm asking you, what's your decision tree? How do you decide when you're reading it, yes, okay, I don't buy that anymore, but I do buy this one? How do you know which is the right
I think
one?
you're confusing buying with application to the modern situation. The Bible has 2 testaments. So to take Old Testament law, I'm no more in favor of stoning adulterous men or women today than I am of sacrificing sheep or sprinkling blood in the Holy of Holies.
So we've made progress.
Yes, in
But
fact,
where does that
biblical
come
revelation is progressive.
But where does that come from? I would argue it comes from Enlightenment values in which we value human life in and of itself. Listen, whether there's a God or not, we should do certain things that we all intuitively know are right, helping the poor and so forth, truth-telling.
The religions around ancient Israel, if we're going to appeal to culture, didn't value life. Not anywhere near the way Deuteronomy, if you want to pick that book, values life. Some of them thought that the gods created humans to be slaves for them, to clear out the canals.
And we don't
Infant
accept that
sacrifice
anymore. Yes.
was widely practiced. Even the Jews slipped into that multiple times. We read that in Leviticus 18, Leviticus 20. Human sacrifice, cannibalism is common to most cultures until fairly recently. I mean,
But why commit
lex
yourself?
talionis.
Time.